The alarm clock on the nightstand clicked from 4:59 to 5:00, and Ethan Cole's eyes opened at the exact same second, like someone had pulled a string. He lay on his back for a moment, staring at the water stain on the ceiling above his bed. In the dim light, it looked like a rough outline of a broken bridge. He blinked once, twice, then reached out and slapped the alarm before it could even beep. His hand lingered on the plastic casing. The skin along his knuckles was dry and cracked. Calluses had begun to form at the base of his fingers from the last few weeks of odd jobs. He flexed his fingers, heard the faint pop of joints, then sat up. The apartment was quiet, the kind of thin quiet that did not really block out the world, just laid over it. Through the single-pane window came the distant roar of a freight train cutting through Aurora's industrial side, rattling the glass for a second. Somewhere downstairs, a neighbor's TV hummed low. Ethan swung his feet to the floor and winced at the cold linoleum. He checked his phone. 5:02. The interview email still sat at the top of his inbox subject line in bold: Kelso Dynamics interview confirmation, 10:00 a.m. He read it again, even though he could have recited it from memory. The building address in downtown Chicago, the name of the hiring manager, the phrase senior structural engineer. That phrase stuck in his chest like something he wanted to swallow whole. He stood and went to the tiny kitchenette. The coffee maker sat on the counter, an old machine with a crack along the side. He scooped in the cheapest grounds he could find at the discount store and poured in water from the tap, watching it cloud against the stained plastic reservoir. His hand shook just enough that a few drops splashed onto the counter. He wiped them with the dish towel and pressed the brew button. The machine groaned itself awake. As the smell of coffee crept into the room, he crossed to the narrow bathroom. The mirror above the sink was speckled with old toothpaste and age. Ethan clicked on the light, squinting at his reflection. Dark circles under his eyes. Stubble he had tried to shave last night with a dull razor. Hair that never sat quite right without gel he could not afford anymore. On the hook behind the door hung his one-suit jacket, the dark blue one he had bought 8 years ago for his wedding. The shoulders were a little loose now. Grief and cheap food had carved weight off him in uneven places. He pulled it on anyway. The tie lay folded on the counter. Dark gray silk, a faint diagonal pattern frayed just a bit at the tip. It had been his father's. His mother had mailed it to him after the funeral in a box with some photographs and a watch that no longer worked. He looped the tie around his neck, fingers moving automatically. Half Windsor like his dad used to show him in the mirror before school. His hands were larger than he remembered his father's being. Rougher, too. As he tightened the knot, his phone buzzed on the counter. He did not need to check the screen to know who it was. "Hey, Mom," he said, picking it up and putting it on speaker. "Are you up?" Carol Cole's voice filled the small bathroom sharp, even through the tinny speaker. "Yeah, I'm up. You cannot be late today. You understand that, right?" Ethan looked at the tie knot straight and centered. "I understand." "I mean it, Ethan. This is a real company, a real position. You show up late, they will move on, and they should. Your father would have been ready a week ago." He leaned against the sink. "I have been getting ready all month." The line went quiet for a second. In the background, he heard the clink of a spoon against a mug, the faint sound of a morning news anchor talking about traffic in some other city. "I just do not want to see you waste this," she said at last. Softer, but not by much. "Mia needs stability. She needs to see her father succeed at something. She idolizes you." "I know," he said. "Do you? 'Cause from here, it looks like you are barely keeping your head above water." He closed his eyes. "I am going to that interview. On time. Prepared. Okay?" Another pause. "Fine. Call me when it is over." The call ended. The bathroom felt smaller. He slipped the phone into his pocket and stepped into the hallway. The coffee maker had finished. He poured the dark liquid into a chipped mug that said "World's Best Dad" in fading letters. Mia had picked it out at a thrift store for Father's Day the year before, paying in crumpled dollar bills and coins from her pink piggy bank. Steam rose, carrying the bitter smell. He took a careful sip, burning the tip of his tongue, then set the mug down and walked to the doorway of the second bedroom. The door was half open. Inside, the nightlight in the corner cast a pale glow over a small bed, a white dresser with one drawer that did not close all the way, and a floor littered with colored blocks and doll shoes. Mia was a small bundle under a unicorn blanket, her dark hair a tangle across the pillow. Her right hand clutched a plush fox so worn the fur had become one smooth patch of fabric. "Mia," Ethan said softly. "Kiddo." She squirmed, then rolled toward him, eyes blinking open. They were big and brown, still hazy with sleep. "What time is it?" she mumbled. "Too early," he said. "But I need to get you ready. Mrs. Harris is taking you to school today, remember?" The downstairs lady, Mia said, rubbing her eyes. Yeah, she is the downstairs lady. Be nice. She is saving Dad a drive. Mia pushed the blanket down and sat up. Her pajama top had cartoon planets on it, faded from too many washes. She looked around, then back at him. Is it the interview day, she asked. It is, he said. Her face brightened in an instant. She scooted on her knees across the mattress and threw her arms around his neck. He caught her easily, her skinny arms squeezing tight. You are going to get it, she said into his shoulder. I can feel it. His throat tightened for a second. He hugged her back, putting his hand on the back of her head, fingers sinking into her messy hair. I like your confidence, he said. Maybe you should come in and answer the questions for me. She leaned back, studying him, like she was trying to decide if he was joking. I do not know about bridges and stuff, she said. You do. He smiled. We will see. In the kitchen, he poured cereal into a bowl and added the last of the milk. Mia dragged her chair over and climbed up, swinging her feet. He packed her lunch into a worn blue lunchbox, folding the sandwich in wax paper, adding a single cookie wrapped in a napkin. Can you pick me up today? She asked between bites, milk on her upper lip. I will do my best, he said, wiping it away with his thumb. If the interview goes long, Mrs. Harris might grab you again. Is that okay? Mia shrugged. She gives me extra grapes. Then you might hope I am late. I still want you to get the job, Mia said, quiet but firm. He looked at her for a moment. The kitchen light flickered once, humming faintly. Outside, another freight train passed closer this time. He reached out and put his hand over hers on the table. Her fingers were sticky from cereal. His were rough and nicked. The size difference was ridiculous. Me too, he said. Later, after Mia had brushed her teeth and pulled on her backpack with the missing zipper pull, they stepped out into the crisp morning. The hallway smelled like someone else's frying bacon and the faint chemical sweetness of cleaning supplies. On the sidewalk, Ethan crouched to zip her jacket up to her chin. You remember the rules with Mrs. Harris, he asked. Stay close. Hold her hand crossing the street. Say thank you. Do not let her cat in my backpack. Especially that last one, he said. She giggled. Then her face turned serious. You will call me if you get it, she asked. I will come tell you, he said. He straightened, watched her trot down the stairs toward the first-floor apartment, where an older woman in a robe waited in the doorway. Mrs. Harris waved. He waved back. Mia looked over her shoulder one more time and lifted her hand, fingers spread wide. He lifted his own, matching her from a distance hand against the cool morning air. Then she was gone inside. For a moment, Ethan stood alone on the cracked sidewalk, listening to the hum of early traffic out on the main road, the faint echo of a dog barking behind a fence. The cold nipped at his cheeks. He checked his phone again, 7:12. He walked back up, took one last look around the apartment, grabbed his folder with printed resumes and reference letters, and slipped his father's tie straight under his collar. He locked the door, checked the knob with one firm twist of his hand, and headed down to the parking lot, heart beating a steady, loud rhythm in his ears as the morning light climbed slowly over the low roofs of Aurora. Ethan's sedan sat where it always did, near the back of the cracked asphalt lot, squeezed between a dented pickup and a sun-faded minivan. Frost still rimmed the windshield. He dug in his pocket for the scraper, then remembered he had broken it last winter. He rubbed his palms together, breathed into them, and used the side of an old loyalty card to scratch away the thin layer of ice at the driver's side. Cold bit into his fingers. Little flakes of frost clung to the dark hairs on his knuckles. When he finally slid behind the wheel, the seat creaked and the fabric released the faint smells of old coffee and fast food. He turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, then caught with a shudder. The dashboard lights flared to life, including the check engine light that had become a kind of permanent decoration. He watched it. It stayed on for 3 seconds, then flickered off. Good girl, he muttered, and patted the steering wheel. He pulled out of the lot and onto the side street, the tires crunching over grit and bits of broken glass. Aurora's morning was coming awake. Porch lights blinked off school buses rumbled past, and the sky over the low buildings brightened from charcoal to a muddy blue. As he waited at a red light, his mind drifted back to the night before. Mia had been on the living room floor sitting cross-legged in a nest of colored blocks. The TV was off. A small lamp on the end table threw a warm circle over the worn rug. Look, she had said without looking up when he walked in. It is a bridge. He had set his lunchbox down and crouched beside her. 2 stacks of books made the piers. The blocks formed a wobbly arch between them. In the middle, a little plastic horse stood frozen. What happens if a truck goes across? He had asked. Mia pushed an invisible truck along the air. When she tapped the span with her fingers, the arch collapsed. The horse toppled to one side. Oh no, she said, giggling. Ethan picked up a block and examined the way she had stacked them. The base was narrow, the angles off. What did we say about foundations, he asked. That they cannot be wiggly, she said. That is right. They had rebuilt it together, him guiding her hands. Wider at the bottom, overlapping pieces a cleaner arch. When they were done, he set the horse back on top and gave the base a small push. It swayed but did not fall. That is better, Mia had said, eyes wide. Remembering it now, sitting alone at the red light, he let out a slow breath and eased his grip on the steering wheel. The light turned green. He pulled onto the main road that fed toward the highway. Street after street passed by one-story houses and worn-out strip malls. At the on-ramp to I-88, he checked the dashboard clock. 7:31. Plenty of time. He merged onto the interstate. Traffic was steady but smooth, a flow of cars and trucks pulling east toward Chicago. The city was still invisible, a gray promise beyond the horizon. The highway cut across flat fields and clusters of warehouses, the shoulders dusted with leftover gravel and salt. Ethan settled into the slow lane, kept one hand at the top of the wheel and one elbow resting on the window ledge. The heater pushed out air that smelled faintly of dust. On the passenger seat, his folder sat with its neatly stacked resumes and reference letters, a rubber band looped around it. He turned on the radio, let the static search through a couple of stations before landing on a local talk show. A cheerful host chattered about sports scores and weather, then shifted to a news segment. A calm reporter's voice filled the car. In downtown Chicago today, Grant Development Group will be unveiling plans for their newest high-rise, a 40-story office tower along the riverfront. CEO Olivia Grant, who took over the company 2 years ago, is scheduled to address investors later this morning. Ethan's fingers tapped once on the steering wheel. High-rises and riverfronts were the kind of projects he used to read about in trade magazines back when his degree still felt fresh, and he could imagine his name on those blueprint sheets. He pictured glass and steel, a clean grid climbing up into the sky. The host cracked a joke about rich people and ribbon cuttings. Ethan turned the volume down and checked the clock again. 7:53. He calculated in his head. Even with moderate traffic, he would be downtown by 9. That left a whole hour to park, maybe grab a coffee that did not come from a cracked machine, and sit somewhere to go over his notes one last time. His phone buzzed in the cup holder, vibrating against the plastic. He glanced down. Mom lit up on the screen. He hesitated, then tapped answer and put it on speaker. Hey, he said. Where are you? Carol asked. There was no greeting, just that. On the highway, heading in. What time does it start again? 10, he said. Then you should already be in the city. I am early, Mom. How early? He watched the road eyes on the curve ahead. An hour at least. Ethan, she said, exhaling. You know traffic can change in a minute. One fender bender, one lane closure, and you are sitting there while someone else walks into that room on time. His jaw tightened. He checked the rearview mirror. A red SUV was tailing him too close. I left as soon as I dropped Mia off, he said. I cannot teleport. I am not asking you to teleport, Carol said. I am asking you to act like this matters. It does, he said quietly. He signaled and moved into the middle lane away from the SUV. The cars ahead rose and fell with the gentle hills of the interstate, their brake lights blinking in loose rhythm. You have a degree people kill for, Carol said. There are men who would give anything to have what you have, and you are scraping by doing day labor hoping for a miracle. This is not a game. I know it is not a game, he said. His voice came out sharper than he meant. He could taste the bitterness in the back of his throat like coffee that had sat too long on the burner. She heard it too. For a moment the line went silent except for a faint dishwasher hum on her end. I just do not want to see you get hurt again, she said. The words surprised him more than any criticism. Her tone had changed, softer, tired. I am already hurt, he almost said. Instead, he swallowed and adjusted his grip on the wheel. His knuckles had gone white. I will call you after, he said. Fine, good luck. The call clicked off. He let out a breath he had not realized he was holding and dropped the phone back into the cup holder. The car hummed along at 65. The overhead signs began to list downtown exits and interchanges, white letters on green backgrounds. He focused on the road markings, the broken white lines sliding beneath his tires in a steady pattern. The hum of the engine, the low murmur of the radio, the occasional whoosh of a passing car, all folded into a kind of background noise that made his thoughts feel sharper. At mile marker 1, he passed under a concrete overpass. Above it, he glimpsed the guardrail and a line of cars moving in the opposite direction. For an instant, he imagined that overpass as a bridge he might have designed. Load calculations, shear forces, rebar placement. His brain slipped into that familiar mode as easily as breathing. He checked the clock again. 8:07. Still good. He rolled his shoulders to loosen the knot forming there and flexed his fingers around the wheel. His right hand drifted to the folder on the passenger seat resting on the edge of the cardboard. He could feel the crispness of the paper underneath the faint ridge of the staple. "Senior structural engineer," he said under his breath, just to hear how it sounded in the air. Traffic ahead began to thicken. Cars clustered closer together, brake lights winking more often. A semi moved from the right lane into the center, its trailer shuddering slightly. Ethan eased off the gas. The speedometer needle dipped. He left a little more space between himself and the sedan in front of him, a silver car with a cracked rear bumper. Another mile, more brake lights. The flow of vehicles tightened into a kind of slow pulse. He glanced at the clock. 8:19. He could feel the first small tug of unease low in his chest. He set his jaw, kept his eyes on the red glow of the lights ahead, and nudged the car forward as the highway began to crawl. Ban đã nói. Tiếp tục phần tiếp theo với logic viết tương tự trước đó. Phần 3, fully SEO optimized article, including FAQs, Vry.song đã nói, đã suy nghĩ trong 12 sis. Fan 3. The crawl turned into a shuffle. Cars packed in tight bumper to bumper, their brake lights glowing in a red chain that stretched out over the next rise. The hum of tires on concrete dropped into a uneven growl. A horn blared somewhere behind him, short and useless. Ethan tapped the brake, then let the car roll forward a few feet. Stopped. Rolled. Again. Stopped. He checked the clock. 8:24. He did the math before he could stop himself. 30, maybe 40 minutes to get into the city from here on a normal day. If this cleared soon, he would still be all right. If. He craned his neck, trying to see past the box truck in front of him. Nothing but a forest of vehicles and the bright flash of hazard lights 2 lanes over. No sirens yet. No sign of anyone moving off to the shoulder. The radio host joked about the usual morning backups and read off a traffic map that meant nothing to Ethan in this lane at this moment. He reached forward and shut the radio off. The silence inside the car felt heavier than the noise. He nudged the car forward another few inches. I-29. He could feel his heartbeat in the sides of his neck. A minivan to his left inched up, and a kid in a car seat pressed his face to the window, staring at Ethan with wide eyes. Ethan managed a tight smile. The kid made a goofy-faced tongue out, then vanished as the minivan crept ahead. Cars from the on-ramp kept trying to merge into the jam, making everything tighter. Ethan glanced at the far right lane. The shoulder was mostly clear. A few vehicles had squeezed over their drivers, standing outside, hands on hips, peering up the line, like they could will the traffic to move. He checked the clock again. 8:36. He imagined the lobby at Kelso, the receptionist checking names off a list, candidates in pressed suits glancing at each other, flipping through notes. A chair with his name on a printout empty. His fingers drummed on the steering wheel, a quick, uneven staccato. He scanned for an exit sign. Overhead, a green board came into view inch by inch. A white arrow pointed to a ramp less than half a mile ahead, leading toward a cluster of numbers and street names he recognized only vaguely from maps. There was a frontage road that paralleled the interstate for a while, then cut through an industrial district toward the city. He had mapped it the night before a backup plan if he needed one. It added some distance but usually avoided heavy congestion. He watched the arrow slide past his windshield and felt a decision tighten inside his chest. The traffic inched forward again. The lane to his right opened up a foot. He flicked his signal on, slid over as soon as a small gap appeared, earning him a frustrated wave from the driver behind. He lifted his hand in apology, though he doubted the other man saw it. The exit loomed. So did the clock. 8:42. He could stay in this moving parking lot and hope it magically cleared. Or he could take the road he knew, the one he had stared at on his laptop screen while Mia slept in the next room. As the nose of his sedan reached the solid white line that divided the highway from the ramp, he turned the wheel. The car rolled onto the off-ramp and began to descend. Immediately, the sense of being pressed on all sides loosened. The lanes opened. He took the curve slowly, then merged onto a 4-lane surface road, lined with chain-link fences and low warehouses with faded logos. Traffic here was light. A delivery truck, a couple of compact cars, a police cruiser far ahead. The stoplights cycled without holding him long. His shoulders dropped a fraction. He followed the route he had memorized, past a concrete plant with its tall silos and gray powder dust hanging in the air, past an auto parts store with a blinking sign missing 2 letters. At an intersection with a shuttered diner, he turned right. The road narrowed to 2 lanes. The buildings thinned out. Patches of empty lots and scrubby grass replaced the warehouses. A wind picked up, pushing little whirlwinds of dust and leaves across the cracked asphalt. He glanced at the clock. 8:51. If the rest of the way stayed clear, he could be on the highway again closer to the city in less than 15 minutes. It would be tight, but not impossible. He let the car gain speed, the engine settling into a cleaner hum at 45. The further he drove, the quieter it became. No sidewalks, no pedestrians, just the occasional rusted mailbox leaning toward a gravel driveway, a line of bare trees scratching at the sky. He passed under a rusting railroad bridge. A freight train sat on the tracks above, still and silent, its boxcars lined up like a string of brick-colored blocks. As he came out from under the shadow of the bridge, he saw the car. It sat on the right shoulder, angled slightly toward the ditch, its hazard lights flashing in tired orange blinks. The hood was up. The paint was a deep charcoal, the kind that usually came with a luxury badge. The back bumper was clean, no stickers, no dents. Beside it, a woman stood with her arms wrapped around herself. Her dark skirt snapped lightly in the wind. Her blazer did not look like it had been made for standing by the side of an empty road. Her heels sank a little into the gravel every time she shifted. Her hair was pulled back, but a few strands had come loose and whipped around her face. Even from a distance, Ethan could see the way her shoulders hunched, the way she kept glancing up and down the road, as if hoping each car would slow. He felt his foot ease off the gas without thinking. The car rolled a few yards more. His first thought was automatic. Someone else will stop. His second thought came so quickly it cut off the first. No one had stopped yet. He checked the rearview mirror. The road behind him was empty. Ahead, the lane stretched on without another vehicle in sight. He looked at the clock. 8:53. His chest pulled tight. He could feel his heartbeat in his throat again. "Keep going," a voice in his head said, sounding too much like his mother. "You cannot afford this." Another voice, quieter but firmer, sounded like Mia last night, telling him he would get the job because she could feel it. He pressed his foot back on the accelerator. The car rolled past the disabled sedan. For a heartbeat, the woman's face came into clearer view through his passenger window. She looked younger than he had first thought, early 30s maybe. Her eyes were red around the rims, the skin at the corners tight. She shifted her weight and lifted a hand half-heartedly as he approached, as if starting to flag him down and then giving up. He drove past her. The windshield framed the empty road ahead. A hawk wheeled high in the white sky. A plastic bag tumbled across the lane and blew into the scrub on the far side. His fingers closed so tight around the steering wheel that a dull ache started in his palms. He glanced again at the clock. 8:54. His right foot hovered on the gas. Some part of him kept pressing forward as if sheer momentum could decide for him. Another part of him refused to let the car accelerate. He saw for a second very clearly what it would look like to walk into Kelso's lobby on time, to shake hands, to sit down, to try to answer questions with the image of a woman standing alone on a back road lingering at the edges of his mind. He cursed under his breath. His foot moved to the brake. The sedan slowed the engine downshifting with a low groan. Gravel popped under the tires as he pulled onto the narrow shoulder. He let the car come to a full stop, hands still locked around the wheel. He sat there for a moment, the hazard lights of the other car now small in his side mirror, blinking on and off like a heartbeat. His own car idled, the tick of the engine filling the quiet. He looked at the clock. 8:55. He put the transmission in park. His fingers left faint sweat prints on the worn steering wheel as he pulled them free. For a second longer, he stayed in his seat, watching his breath cloud faintly in the cooled air of the cabin. Then he opened the door. Cold wind slid inside, carrying the smell of dry grass and faint exhaust. He stepped out, shut the door behind him, and walked along the gravel shoulder. As he approached, the woman straightened. She wiped at her face quickly, like she could erase the evidence of her nerves in a single motion, and took a small step back from the open hood. "Hi," Ethan called out, raising one hand to show he was not a threat. His voice sounded louder than he expected in the empty space. "You all right?" Her eyes flicked over him. She took him in the old suit, the slightly crooked tie, the lines at the corners of his mouth. "My car just died," she said. Her voice was controlled, but the edges were raw. It was fine, and then everything on the dashboard lit up, and it just stopped. She held up her phone, the screen black. "And this is dead. I have been here a while. You are the first person who has slowed down." He glanced at the road, then at the car. The engine bay yawned open, a neat rectangle of hoses and metal. "Did you see or hear anything weird before? It quit?" he asked. "Just a chugging noise," she said, then nothing. He moved closer and peered under the hood, staying careful not to brush against her. Heat still rose from the engine, the metallic smell of it mixed with the sharp scent of dust and the faint sweetness of whatever air freshener she used. He rested his palm briefly on the front frame, feeling the warmth soak into his skin. Behind him, the road stayed empty. He could feel the seconds slipping one after another, but for the moment he focused on the maze of wires and metal in front of him, searching for something small enough to fix and fast enough to not wreck his entire morning. Up close, the car looked even more expensive than Ethan had thought. Clean grills, sleek lines, a badge he recognized from commercials he skipped on streaming sites. He leaned over the fender and scanned the engine bay. The plastic covers were smooth and new, the metal free of corrosion. He ran his eyes along the obvious paths first. Battery, cables, connections. There it was. The negative battery cable hung just loose enough to make his stomach sink. It had probably shaken free on the rough stretch of road, cutting power in an instant. Simple, stupid, fixable. He reached in and brushed his fingers against it. The plastic was warm and dusty. He wiggled it slightly. It moved more than it should. He straightened and looked at the woman. "Good news," he said. "It is not your whole engine. Your battery cable is loose." She frowned. "Is that bad?" "It is inconvenient," he said. "But easy. I can tighten it. You will be okay." Relief flashed over her face so fast it almost looked like a trick of the light. Her shoulders dropped. Her fingers, which had been clenched around her phone, loosened a little. "You can fix it?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "If you have a few minutes." He glanced at his watch. The second hand swept cleanly around the dial. 8:57. His chest tightened. He could feel the fork in his day sharp as a rail spike. Help this stranger and cut his margin down to almost nothing, or get back in his car and hope someone with more time stopped later. He turned back to the engine. "I have some tools in my trunk," he said. He walked quickly to his sedan. The trunk creaked when he opened it, revealing a jumble of old moving blankets, a small jack jumper cables, and a dented red toolbox that had belonged to his father. The metal of the box was cold against his palm as he lifted it out. The handle dug into his fingers. For a second he saw his father's hands, younger than his own, were now closing this same latch, pushing this same box into the back of another car decades ago. Ethan shut the trunk and carried the box back to the stalled sedan. "You are sure you do not have somewhere you need to be?" the woman asked as he set the box down. He flipped the latches, the sound sharp in the quiet. "I do," he said. "Job interview." Her eyes flicked to his tie, then back to his face. "Today? In a couple hours," he said. "Downtown." She glanced at the barren road around them, then at her own dead car. "I feel like I should tell you not to do this," she said, "and also beg you to do this." He could not help a quick small smile. "Do not worry," he said. "This is the fast kind of trouble." He pulled out a wrench and leaned in again. The cable's clamp was slightly crooked on the battery post. He loosened it, reseated it, then tightened until the metal bit down cleanly. His knuckles brushed rough surfaces, picking up dirt and a thin line of grease. His hands felt steadier as they worked. The world shrank to the metal under his fingers, the weight of the tool, the familiar sequence of steps. "Where were you headed?" he asked without looking up. "Downtown too," she said. "I have a meeting." "Big one?" he asked. "Big enough," she said. There was something in her tone that made him curious, but he let it go. He had enough to worry about. He checked the connection again, tugged it to make sure it held. Satisfied, he straightened and wiped his hands on an old rag he kept folded in the bottom of the toolbox. "Try it now," he said, stepping back. She hesitated a second, then slipped past him and into the driver's seat. When she turned the key, the engine caught on the first try, humming smooth and strong. She let out a sound that was almost a laugh. Thank God, she breathed, turning the key off again. She climbed out the relief, still lifting her voice. "You are an actual miracle." "Just a guy with a wrench," Ethan said. He closed the hood with a solid thump. The sound echoed a little in the open space. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, reaching for her purse. "Nothing," he said. She blinked. "I cannot just let you walk away. You saved my whole day." "You would have done the same," he said. Her expression made it clear she was not entirely convinced of that. "At least let me give you a ride," she said. "If you are heading into the city, I can get you closer." He shook his head. "I have my car," he said. "Besides, they would probably notice if I showed up to an engineering interview getting out of a stranger's luxury sedan." That pulled a real laugh out of her. It softened her features, took a few years off. "Fair point," she said. She looked at her watch and then at his. "What time is your interview exactly?" she asked. 10, he said. Her mouth tightened, not in judgment, in calculation. "Then you need to go," she said, "right now." He nodded. His heart had already started beating faster again. He bent to close the toolbox, snapped the latches, and lifted it. As he turned away, she spoke again. "Wait," she said. "I did not get your name." "Ethan," he said. "Ethan Cole." She stepped closer and held out her hand. "Thank you, Ethan Cole," she said. "I am Olivia." Her hand was cooler than his, her shake firm. He felt the slight tremor she was trying to hide. "Get where you need to be, Olivia," he said. You too, she replied. He carried the toolbox back to his trunk and set it inside. When he slid behind his own wheel again, his fingers left faint smears of grease on the steering wheel. He checked the time. 9:03. A sharp spike of panic punched through his ribs. He turned the key. The engine started on the second try. He pulled back onto the road, glanced once at his mirror. Olivia's car was already rolling into the lane behind him, her hazard lights off now. The two vehicles moved forward together for a minute, then parted as he turned left, and she stayed straight at the next intersection. The narrow road carried him through the rest of the industrial stretch and up a gentle rise. At the top, he merged onto another feeder road that led back toward the highway. The city skyline had begun to appear in the distance as a hazy line of rectangles. He watched the clock tick through each minute like a countdown. 9:18. He accelerated whenever he could, braked late but safe at lights, wove through traffic without taking stupid risks. Every red light felt personal. By the time he reached the main highway again, the earlier jam had loosened. Cars moved slower than usual, but moving. He merged in and pushed the speed as far as he dared, the engine growling in protest, but holding. Downtown rose around him, bridges and overpasses, crisscrossing tall buildings catching the light. He followed the directions he had memorized to the Kelso building, turned into a garage, and spiraled up through dim levels that smelled of oil and damp concrete. He found a spot on level 4, jammed the car into park, and shut off the engine. His hands shook as he grabbed the folder from the passenger seat. He checked the time, 10:21. He could feel his heart up in his throat. He stepped out, locked the car with a hurried twist of the key, and jogged toward the stairwell. His dress shoes slapped hard against the concrete. Each breath burned cold in his chest. The lobby of Kelso Dynamics was colder than he expected. Air conditioning hid his flushed face as he pushed through the glass doors. The floor was polished stone, pale and reflective. A wall of windows looked out over the busy street. A sleek reception desk sat in the center, a woman behind it, in a tailored blouse and perfect posture. A few people in suits sat in chairs along the wall, flipping through their phones or glancing at the flat screen displaying project photos. Ethan tried to smooth his tie as he approached the desk. "Good morning," the receptionist said, looking up. Her smile was polite, practiced. "Can I help you?" He swallowed. "Ethan Cole," he said. His voice came out slightly hoarse. "I have an interview scheduled for 10. Her fingers tapped on the keyboard. The light from the monitor gave her face a cool glow. "What was the position, Mr. Cole?" she asked. "Senior structural engineer," he said. She clicked twice, then paused. Her eyes traced something on the screen. She checked the small clock at the corner of her monitor. Then she looked back at him. "I am sorry," she said. "Your interview was at 10 o'clock. He forced a quick, thin smile. "I know. Traffic was a mess, and I had a small delay on the way. I got here as fast as I could." She kept her tone neutral. "Mr. Harrison's policy is that candidates must arrive on time," she said. "If they are late, he does not see them." "I am only 20 minutes late," Ethan said. He heard the pleading creep into his voice and tried to tamp it down. "I am here. I am ready. If he has even 5 minutes, I can show him I did not take this lightly." She looked past him for a second toward the bank of elevators, then back at her screen. "I understand, Mr. Cole," she said, "but the schedule has already moved on. I do not have any openings to reschedule today." "Another day," he said. "Any day. I can come whenever works for him." Her eyes met his. There was a hint of sympathy there, buried under layers of procedure. "I do not have authorization to offer another appointment," she said quietly. "I am sorry." The cool air of the lobby prickled against the back of his neck. For a moment, the sounds around him became distant. The murmur of another conversation, the soft ding of an elevator, the scrape of a chair. He nodded slowly. "Right," he said. He stepped back from the desk. One of the men in suits sitting along the wall glanced up at him, then away. Ethan shifted his folder from one hand to the other. The paper edges bit into his palm. Outside, the street noise washed over him when he stepped through the doors. Horns, voices, a bus braking at the corner. He stood on the sidewalk feeling like he had just walked out of a different kind of building entirely. He turned left and walked without thinking just far enough to reach the edge of the block, then stopped beside a metal trash can. His reflection in the nearby window looked like it belonged to someone else. The tie, the cheap suit, the tired eyes. His phone buzzed. He did not look at the screen. He knew who it was. He answered. "Well," his mother asked. He watched a pigeon hop near the curb, pecking at a stale piece of bread. "I did not get it," he said. There was a silence on the line, not empty exactly, heavy. "What happened?" she asked. "I was late," he said. The words tasted like rust. "Late," she repeated. "Ethan?" Her voice flattened around his name. There was an accident, she asked, something serious. He thought of the empty road, the quiet. Olivia's eyes when she thought no one would stop. The feel of the wrench in his hand. I stopped to help someone, he said. He heard her inhale. You stopped, she said. On the way to the most important meeting you have had in years, you decided to play roadside assistance. He closed his eyes. She was alone, he said. Her car died. No phone. No one else had stopped. That is terrible, Carol said. For her. She paused. But what about you? What about Mia? Do you understand what you keep doing to yourself? You keep choosing to lose. He leaned his shoulder against the cool stone of the building, the phone warm against his ear. I know what this means, he said quietly. Do you? She asked. Because I do not think you do. You cannot keep living like this. You cannot keep missing every step and then acting surprised that you are still in the same place. His jaw clenched, his free hand curled into a fist at his side. I have to go, Mom, he said. Do not, you hang up on me, Ethan. We are not done here. He ended the call. The sudden absence of her voice rang louder than the street. He slid the phone into his pocket and stared at his own reflection in the glass again. The tie had slipped a little off-center. He straightened it by habit, even though there was no point now. His hand shook as he dropped it back to his side. The city moved on around him unconcerned. Cars flowed through the intersection. People hurried past with coffee cups and briefcases. Somewhere above, unseen, someone was starting a meeting in a conference room with a view. Ethan stood on the sidewalk, folder limp in his hand, and felt the weight of the minutes he had traded. His father's tie pressed against his throat. His palm still smelled faintly of engine grease. He exhaled long and slow, then turned away from the glass and walked back toward the parking garage. The echo of his footsteps swallowed by the steady noise of downtown. The parking garage swallowed him again. The air inside was cool and smelled of rubber and exhaust. Ethan walked up the ramp to his car without really seeing any of the vehicles he passed. His folder hung at his side, the edges bent now. He unlocked the sedan and slid in. For a moment, he just sat there with his hands on the wheel, staring through the windshield at the concrete wall a few feet away. The quiet buzz of the engine from some car nearby filled the space between his thoughts. He set the folder on the passenger seat and let his head fall back against the headrest. His phone vibrated in his pocket twice more before he pulled it out and silenced it. He did not read the messages. He started the car and eased out of the spot. On the way down the ramps, the turning circles pressed him gently against the seat. He signaled automatically at each level, even though no one was behind him. By the time he hit the street and pointed the car toward the freeway, the knot in his chest had settled into a dense weight. The drive back to Aurora felt shorter, or maybe he just remembered less of it. Signs, lanes, exits all passed in a blur of lines and color. His hands kept the car between the white stripes. His eyes checked the mirrors and speedometer. His mind stayed fixed on the image of the receptionist's neutral face. At home, the apartment looked the same as it had that morning. Same peeling paint, same uneven blinds. The sunlight fell across the kitchen counter in a tilted rectangle. He set his keys in the bowl by the door and dropped the folder on the table. The papers slid halfway out, their neatness gone. He stared at them for a second, then flipped them closed again without reading. The silence of the apartment pressed close. No cartoons, no footsteps, no questions. He filled a glass with water from the tap and drank half of it in one go. The water tasted metallic. He set the glass down harder than he meant to. A thin line of water sloshed over the rim onto the counter. He wiped it with the edge of his sleeve. On the fridge, a magnet held up Mia's drawing of a bridge. 2 towers, a rainbow of lines between them. Underneath, she had printed in big uneven letters, "My dad builds stuff." He stood there with his hand resting on the magnet, his thumb covering the corner of one tower. A little after 3, Mrs. Harris knocked and then let herself in with Mia at her side. Ethan forced a smile onto his face. "Hey, kiddo," he said. Mia dropped her backpack by the door and ran to him. Her shoes squeaked on the linoleum. How was it, she asked before he could even kneel. He bent down so they were eye to eye. Her face was hopeful, open, completely unguarded. He tried to decide how much truth he could give without making that look fall away. "I did not get that one," he said. "They were not able to see me." Her brows pulled together. "They did not see you. I was late," he said. "Things got a little complicated on the way." "Because you helped the lady?" she asked. He blinked. "How did you know about that?" he asked. "You told Mrs. Harris," Mia said. "She said you did a nice thing and the world needs more people like you. Then she said sometimes grown-up things are very stupid." Mrs. Harris, still standing near the door, lifted both hands a little. "Guilty," she said. "Sorry," she overheard. Ethan let out a breath that was almost a laugh. It is okay, he said. He looked back at Mia. Mrs. Harris is right about grown-up things. Are we gonna be okay? Are we gonna be okay, Mia asked. The question came so small and quiet that it hurt more than his mother's words had. He reached out and pulled her close. Yeah, he said into her hair. We are going to be okay. I will find something. The something found him a few days later. It came in the form of a handwritten flyer taped to the notice board outside the small grocery store down the block. In black marker, laborers needed construction site. Start immediately. A phone number along the bottom little strips cut so you could tear one off. He stood there with a carton of eggs in one hand and stared at the paper. His eyes went to the word laborers, then to the smaller line that read, no experience required. His degree in engineering sat folded somewhere in a box under his bed. The student loans tied to it still showed up in his email. No one had asked to see the actual diploma in a long time. He balanced the eggs in the other hand and tore off a strip with the number. The next morning, he stood in a muddy lot on the edge of another industrial area, this one closer to home. A chain-link fence surrounded stacks of lumber and pallets of cinder blocks. A roll-off dumpster sat half full of broken concrete. A temporary office trailer perched near the entrance, its metal steps flecked with dried mud. The foreman was a compact man with a gray beard and a sunburned neck. He introduced himself as Ray Morales. His handshake was firm and quick, his eyes sharp. You ever worked construction before? Ray asked, looking Ethan up and down. Ethan shifted on his feet. He wore his sturdiest boots and his least worn jeans, along with a flannel shirt he had not put on since the last time he tried to fix a neighbor's porch for cash. Not like this, he said. I have been on sites as an engineer. Ray snorted. Everyone is an engineer out here until they touch a shovel, he said. You quit on me after a day, I will find someone who does not. I will not quit, Ethan said. Ray watched him for a second, then jerked his head toward a pile of safety gear. Hard hat, vest, gloves, he said. You start at $15 an hour. Cash on Fridays. We need bodies more than experience. Ethan picked up a yellow hard hat. It felt heavier than it looked. The reflective vest smelled faintly of sweat and dust. The gloves were stiff at first, then loosened slightly as he pulled them over his hand. The first day was a blur of lifting, carrying, and sweat. The August sun lay heavy over the site. The ground gave under his boots soft from a rain earlier in the week. He hauled cinder blocks from one stack to another, moved bundles of rebar, helped guide sheets of plywood off the back of a flatbed, while another man shouted instructions above the whine of a saw. By mid-morning, his shirt clung to his back. His shoulders throbbed. The gloves that had seemed thick and solid now felt thin against the roughness of concrete. During a short break, he sat on an upside-down bucket in the shade of the trailer, breathing through his mouth. The other guys joked with each other in English and Spanish, passing a bottle of water along. A radio played somewhere, the music warbling through static. Ray came over and looked at him. You doing all right, Cole? He asked. Ethan swallowed and nodded. I am good, he said. Ray eyed his posture the way he flexed his fingers. You do not look like a construction guy, Ray said. I am not, Ethan said, but I need the work. Ray shrugged. That is the right answer, he said. Just keep your head down and listen. You will do fine. Ethan looked at his hands. Even through the gloves, he could feel new blisters forming under the calluses. The skin would harden. It always did. When the day ended, his legs felt rubbery. He drove home with the window cracked, letting hot wind wash the dust from his face as much as it could. In the apartment, Mia ran to him, then stopped short when she saw the dirt on his clothes. Whoa, she said. You look like you wrestled the ground. Sort of did, he said. She grinned and poked one of the spots of dried mud on his sleeve. Did you get the job, she asked. The fancy one? He shook his head and tried to keep his tone matter-of-fact. Not that one, he said. But I got a different job. On a construction site. We build things there, too. Her face lit up again. Like bridges, she asked. Not yet, he said. Mostly smaller stuff, but it is still building. She seemed to consider this, then nodded. Do you wear a hat, she asked. He reached into the hallway and picked up the hard hat he had left by the door. He set it on his head. Mia laughed. You look like the guys on my cartoons, she said. The ones who fix everything. He left the hat on while he cooked dinner, partly for her, and partly because he did not feel like taking it off. Dinner was boxed macaroni and cheese with a few peas thrown in from the freezer. Mia talked about school while she ate about a new girl who had a glittery backpack and a teacher who wrote in green ink. After she brushed her teeth and climbed into bed, she tugged on his sleeve. Dad, she said as he tucked the blanket around her, you are going to keep this job right. Yeah, he said, that is the plan. Good, she said. I like when you come home with dirt. It means you did things. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. Sleep, he said. Later, when the apartment was quiet again, he sat at the same table where he had laid out his interview papers. Now the surface held a stack of bills, some open, some still in their envelopes. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of one, feeling the thin ridge of paper against his skin. $15 an hour, 40 hours a week, if he was lucky, some weeks less if the weather turned. It would not stretch far, but it was more than nothing. It was a place to stand that was not thin air. His phone buzzed. He considered ignoring it. Then he saw his mother's name. He answered. "I heard you got something," Carol said. She had a way of finding out even from several hours away. "Construction," he said. "Day labor, on a small site for now." There was a pause. "Construction," she repeated. "With your degree." "It pays the bills," he said. "Barely, I am sure," she said. He could picture her at her kitchen table, hand wrapped around a mug eyes on the calendar on the wall. "Is this what you want Mia to remember?" she asked. Her father coming home exhausted and dirty from lifting rocks when he could be sitting in an office using the brain he was given. "It is honest work," he said. "She sees me trying. That matters too." "Your father was an engineer," she said. "A real one. He provided for his family. He did not settle." The word lodged in his chest. "I am doing my best, Mom," he said. "Your best has not been enough so far," she replied. "I am scared for you. I am scared for her." He stared at the bridge drawing on the fridge again. "I know," he said. The line went quiet. This time she was the one who hung up first. He sat there for a while, the phone cooling in his hand, the room lit only by the small lamp on the counter. Outside, a freight train rumbled by, the car windows rattling faintly in their frames. He flexed his fingers, feeling the sting in the new blisters. His hands rested on the table, palms down, knuckles up. They looked like someone else's for a second. Tomorrow he would wake before dawn again. He would put on the vest and the hard hat and pick up whatever Ray told him to pick up. For now he listened to the fading sound of the train and the ticking of the cheap wall clock, the two rhythms overlapping in the dim apartment. The next week settled into a rhythm that felt like it had always been there waiting. Ethan woke before the alarm most mornings. The gray light that seeped around the blinds had a particular flat quality at that hour, like the day had not quite decided what it was going to be. He dressed in the dark so he would not wake Mia, pulling on jeans that still smelled faintly of dust socks with mismatched elastic and the t-shirt that had become his unofficial work shirt, soft from years of washing. In the kitchen he brewed coffee strong enough to sting his nose. He filled a thermos, packed a peanut butter sandwich into a plastic bag, and then stood for a second with both hands on the counter, feeling the cool laminate under his palms, trying to gather himself. By 6, he was dropping Mia at school breakfast. The cafeteria lights were too bright, the tables already crowded with kids trading milk cartons and cereal bars. She would hug him, quick, smelling of shampoo and crayons, then dash off toward her friends. He watched her pick a seat, watched her laugh at something another girl said, and then turned away before the urge to stay could catch hold. On the site, the days began to blur together. The first week, every muscle complained. His shoulders burned. His lower back screamed when he bent. Blisters rose and burst along the base of his fingers under the rough fabric of the gloves. He went home at night, moving like an old man. Then the second week, the pain dulled. The blisters hardened into calluses. His grip on the rebar became surer. The weight of a cinder block grew familiar, like the weight of a full grocery bag or a sleeping child. The site itself changed by inches. What had been a flat expanse of dirt and mud sprouted trenches and forms, grids of rebar waiting for concrete. Plywood walls rose along chalk lines. The skeleton of a stairwell appeared one day at the edge of the slab, the steps nothing more than rough concrete slabs and temporary rails. The noise was constant, hammers, saws. The squeal of metal dragged across metal. The air smelled of mud, sweat-hot steel, and the occasional sharp chemical tang when someone opened a new bucket of sealant. Ethan carried lifted steadied. Sometimes he held a board long enough for another worker to nail it in place. Sometimes he wheeled a barrow full of broken bricks to the dumpster. Sometimes he just waited standing with his hands on his hips while Ray sorted out some issue with a delivery. On those pauses, his mind wandered in ways his body would not allow when he was in motion. He would look at the shape of the forms, the way the rebar bent and intersected, and could not help mentally calculating the loads, the span, the safety factor. The habit was bone deep. Ray began to notice. One afternoon, Ethan was helping two other guys brace a temporary wall. The wind had picked up, pushing against the plywood with a low ripple. Ethan stepped back, frowned, and shifted one of the braces 2 inches, changing the angle. "That is not going to hold like that if it rains tonight," he said. One of the guys, a big man named Luis, shrugged. "It has held so far," Luis said. "For now," Ethan said. "But if it gets saturated and the gusts hit from the west, the top will want to kick out." Ray, walking by with a clipboard, stopped. "You a weatherman now, Cole?" he asked. Ethan pointed to the brace where it met the ground. "If you anchor it here instead," he said, "the load goes straighter down, not sideways. Less chance of failure." Luis gave him a look but adjusted the brace. Ray watched the change, then nodded. "You said you were on sites as an engineer," Ray said. "I was," Ethan replied. "You still think like one," Ray said. There was no accusation in it. It sounded almost like approval. At lunch breaks, Ethan sat on stacks of lumber or overturned buckets with the others. They shared bottles of water, stories about bad bosses and old jobs, jokes that bounced between English and Spanish. The sun baked the gravel around them. Sweat dried on the backs of their necks in white lines. The work left him exhausted, but the exhaustion was simple. His body hurt because he had used it. The ache did not have the sharp, helpless edge that waiting for an email once had. Evenings with Mia became more precious because there was less of him left to offer. He picked her up from the after-school program when he could, or from Mrs. Harris when he worked late. She would barrel into him little sneakers, squeaking, her backpack bouncing. He would bend down and let her weight hit him full, bracing his legs like he was catching something fragile and heavy at the same time. At home, they fell into their own routines. She did homework at the kitchen table, while he rinsed out his lunch containers and shook the dust from his clothes outside the door. The water in the bathtub turned gray when he washed. The mirror fogged with steam, and sometimes he stood there a few extra minutes, letting the hot water hit his shoulders, feeling it work into the tight muscles. One night, as he sat at the table with a stack of worksheets he did not have to help with, Mia looked up from her spelling words. "Grandma called today," she said. He looked up. "On whose phone?" he asked. "Mrs. Harris," Mia said. "She said Grandma wanted to say hi. Is that okay?" "Of course," he said. "What did you talk about?" Mia traced the eraser end of her pencil along the lines on the paper. "She asked if you still do smart people work," Mia said. Ethan felt something in his chest bend, not break, just shift. "What did you say?" he asked. "I said you build stuff," Mia replied simply. Then she asked if you still do math and science. "Did you tell her I help you with fractions?" he asked, trying for a lighter tone. "I told her you count how many blocks you carry and how high the walls are," Mia said. She got quiet for a minute. He imagined Carol on the other end, lips pressed, thin eyes drifting toward the photo of his father that still hung in her hallway. "Then she said you used to wear a tie," Mia added, "and now you wear a hat." Mia glanced up at him, as if checking to see if she had said something wrong. Ethan forced a small smile. "I still own the tie," he said. "I like the hat better," Mia replied. "The tie chokes your neck." She mimed tugging at an imaginary knot face scrunched. It pulled a laugh out of him that surprised them both. "You are not wrong," he said. Later, when she was asleep, he sat on the edge of her bed for a moment, watching her breathe. The streetlight outside threw a soft square of light across one corner of the room. On the floor near her dresser, the blocks from the bridge game lay in a tidy pile. She had sorted them by color. He picked one up, rolled it between his fingers, then set it back and went to the kitchen. His phone chimed with a text from his mother. "I did not mean to upset her," the message read. "I just worry." He stared at the screen. His thumb hovered over the keypad. He typed and erased a few sentences, then finally settled on, "She is fine. We are okay." He did not add anything else. He set the phone face down on the table. The turning point came on a Monday, almost a month into the job. The morning air felt heavier, a hint of late summer humidity. The sky was a pale, washed-out blue. Ethan arrived at the site to find the usual bustle slightly more charged. Trucks were backed up near the entrance. A crane operator sat in his cab helmet turned toward the office trailer. On the door of the trailer, a fresh paper had been taped. Ray stood nearby, reading it over with another supervisor. When Ethan approached, vest already on, gloves tucked into his waistband, Ray waved him over. "Morning, Cole," he said. "Good timing. Got some news." "Good or bad?" Ethan asked. Ray shrugged. "Depends on how you feel about long drives and fancy buildings," he said. He tapped the paper with 2 fingers. "Company landed a bigger contract," Ray continued. "Downtown, high-rise corporate offices, lot of money in it. They want a crew they can trust, so some of us are moving over there. You are on the list." Ethan blinked. "Downtown Chicago?" he asked. "Near the river," Ray said. "Place with glass everywhere. Belongs to some development group with too much cash and not enough patience. We start there next Monday. New site, new safety rules, same pay. You want in?" Ethan looked past Ray at the half-built structure behind them. The small building felt almost modest by comparison to what he was picturing now. He imagined cranes taller than anything here, steel skeletons reaching up into the sky, planes drawn by people who had sat where he once hoped to sit. "Yeah," he said, "I am in." Ray nodded like he had expected that answer. "Good," he said. You work hard, you listen, and you do not freak out when someone in a suit walks by, you will be fine. Those projects are where reputations get made. The week that followed moved quickly. The crew rushed to get the current site to a point where another team could take over. They poured slabs, finished framing, and cleaned up debris. Ethan found himself working overtime hours whenever the light held. At night, he studied the bus routes and driving times into the city, figuring out the least painful way to get from Aurora to the downtown site without making Mia's mornings worse. The extra commute time would mean earlier alarms and tighter evenings, but the work would last longer than the small project he was on now. On Sunday night, he laid out his clothes in the chair by the bed, slightly cleaner jeans, his best work boots, a shirt without holes. He set his hard hat and vest by the door, along with his lunch cooler thermos and a folded set of bus schedules. Mia watched him from the couch, her feet tucked under her. "What is different?" she asked. "Siehst. New place tomorrow," he said. "Bigger building, in the city." "Are there bridges?" she asked. "Lots of them," he said. "You can see some from the site." Her eyes widened. "Can I see one too?" she asked. "When it is safe," he said. "Maybe one weekend we will ride the train in and walk around." She seemed satisfied with that and turned back to her cartoon, but he could feel her watching him from the corner of her eye as he checked and rechecked his alarm. The next morning, the sky above Aurora was still dark when he left. The air had a cool dampness to it that hinted at fog. Streetlights pooled painless circles onto the sidewalks. He drove east, the horizon slowly lightening. As he neared the city, the familiar outline of Chicago rose ahead, a cluster of dark shapes, gradually edged in gold by the climbing sun. The new site was hard to miss. 2 cranes towered above a hollow rectangle of steel and concrete. Temporary fencing wrapped the perimeter, draped with banners that read Grant Development Group and promised future luxury office space. Security guards in dark jackets stood at the gate checking badges and clipboards. Ethan pulled into a gravel lot set aside for workers. His boots crunched as he stepped out. The air buzzed with a different energy than the smaller site. More people, more machines, more noise. The smell of diesel mixed with river air and city grit. Ray waved him over from near the entrance, hard hat already on. "Welcome to the big leagues, Cole," he said. "Try not to get lost." They checked in with a site supervisor, signed extra safety forms, and listened to a briefing that mentioned investors' schedules and fines in the same breath. Ethan clipped a visitor badge to his vest and followed Ray through the gate. Inside the building rose around them a skeleton of concrete columns and steel beams. Workers moved along temporary stairs and scaffolding, their voices echoing against the hard surfaces. Sparks flared from a welder on the second floor, a bright shower against the gray. Ethan tipped his head back to take in the height. The floors above seemed to stack up toward a pale square of sky. On one side, through a gap where glass would eventually go, he could see a slice of the river, and beyond it a bridge carrying morning traffic, its steel trusses catching the light. For a moment, as Ray rattled off instructions about where to stage materials and which foreman to report to, Ethan's mind slipped into that old configuration. He looked at the beams, the connections, the temporary bracing, and saw more than metal. He saw load paths, stress points, the elegant math that held it all up. He flexed his hands inside his gloves, feeling the rough fabric catch on his skin. The calluses there belonged to the laborer he had become. The thoughts in his head still belonged to the engineer he once was. Then Ray clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on," Ray said. "Drywall does not carry itself." Ethan nodded and followed the echo of his boots, joining the larger rhythm of the site as the morning picked up speed. By mid-morning, the site had settled into its own kind of controlled chaos. Ethan worked on the 3rd floor, helping Luis and another guy named Mark unload sheets of drywall from a freight elevator. The walls were still open, metal studs exposed. The wind slipped through the gaps and brought with it the smell of the river and something faintly metallic from the nearby bridge. "Careful with that edge," Luis said as they eased another sheet out of the elevator. "You scratch it. I am not taking the blame." Ethan adjusted his grip fingers, biting into the rough gypsum board through his gloves. The weight pulled at his shoulders. They shuffled forward, boots crunching over screws and dust, then leaned the sheet gently against the framing. He straightened and rolled his shoulders once. The hard hat sat warm on his head. Sweat gathered at the back of his neck. Below, somewhere near the entrance, a cluster of engines idled a slightly different pitch than the usual deliveries. Ethan heard it without really registering it at first. Then voices joined in, more clipped and layered than the calls of the crew. Ray's voice crackled over a nearby radio. "All crew heads up," he said. "Executive tour in 10. Keep it clean, keep it safe, do not be idiots." Louise groaned. "Here come the suits," he muttered. Mark spat a small piece of drywall dust out of his mouth and wiped his face with his sleeve. You think they even know what this stuff weighs? Mark asked, nodding at the stack of boards. Luis grinned. They know what the invoice weighs, he said. Ethan picked up another sheet with Luis. The elevator doors closed behind them with a clank and hummed as it descended again. He had been on sites when executives walked through before. Usually it meant a lot of pointing some forced jokes and a reminder to tuck shirts in. The numbers and decisions stayed somewhere above his line of sight. He tried to focus on the tasks at hand. Lift, carry, lean, repeat. The freight elevator chimed and slid open again. Another stack of drywall stood inside. As they grabbed the corners, footsteps sounded on the stairs at the far end of the floor, sharper and more measured than the usual heavy tread of work boots. There was the quick tap of heels on concrete, the lower thud of dress shoes, a murmur of conversation. The schedule has to hold if we want tenants in by Q4. The steel delivery got pushed, we compensated with, safety record here is one of the better ones. Ethan turned his head just enough to glimpse the group as they emerged. 5 people. 4 men in dark suits, white hard hats perched cleanly on their styled hair. 1 woman. Her hard hat sat over a neat twist of dark hair. She wore a charcoal blazer over a white blouse and black pants that somehow looked right, even in this unfinished place. She walked a half step ahead of the men, listening to a site manager on her left who was pointing out details with a tablet. They stepped around a stack of lumber. One of the suited men wrinkled his nose at the dust. The woman did not. Ethan looked away and shifted his grip on the drywall. Eyes on the board, Luis said quietly. I do not want to drop this in front of them. Ethan nodded, and they moved the sheet into place. The executives' voices floated closer as they examined the far corner of the floor. Someone asked a question about fireproofing. Someone else mentioned change orders and budgets. Ethan grabbed another sheet. Last one, Mark called from inside the elevator. They took it and backed out. As they turned, Ethan felt a prickle between his shoulder blades. The sense of being watched crawled up his spine. He set the drywall against the stud wall and finally looked up. The group had shifted. The site manager was still talking, but the woman in the charcoal blazer was not looking at him anymore. She was looking at Ethan. Her gaze was direct focused, like she was studying a blueprint. For a second, he did not place her. Her hair was different, pulled back tighter, and the setting was so far from the empty road that his brain resisted the connection. Then his memory caught up. The blue flicker of hazard lights, the open hood, her hands clenched around a dead phone. His mouth went dry. She took 3 steps toward him, almost without seeming to decide to. One of the suited men paused mid-sentence. Another reached out as if to catch her elbow, then thought better of it. Excuse me, she said to the site manager. I need a moment. He blinked, then nodded quickly. Of course, Ms. Grant, he said. The title slid past Ethan's ears without landing. She walked straight up to him, stopping a couple of feet away. Up close, he could see the faint shadows under her eyes, the light foundation that could not quite erase them. There was a small crease between her brows that had not been there on the roadside. You are the man who stopped, she said. He wiped his hands on his gloves without thinking. Yeah, he said. Your car on that back road couple weeks ago. Her lips tightened, then softened. My car did not just stop, she said. It died. Completely. You brought it back. Luis and Mark exchanged a look and quietly busied themselves, stacking the last drywall, giving them the illusion of privacy. Ethan adjusted his hard hat. I tightened a cable, he said. The car did the rest. She huffed out a small breath that might have been a laugh if it had a little more air behind it. I never got your name, she said. Ethan, he said. Ethan Cole. Olivia Grant, she replied. She replied. He nodded once. Fitting, he said. Your last name is all over the fences here. A flicker of surprise crossed her face at his tone. Not disrespectful, just honest. This is one of ours, she said. Grant Development is building it. She glanced around the floor at the stacks of materials, the workers, the open spaces where offices would one day be. I did not expect to see you here, she said. When you told me you had an interview that morning, I imagined something different. Me too, he said. She studied him for a moment. The sound of a saw started up nearby and then stopped again. Dust motes floated through a shaft of light between them. Did you make it? She asked. The question was simple, but heavy. To your interview. He could have softened it. He could have said almost. Instead, he answered straight. I was 23 minutes late, he said. They would not see me. Her eyes closed for a heartbeat. When she opened them, they were sharper. Because of me, she said. He shifted his weight. Because I decided to stop, he said. You did not ask me to. You did not wave me down. You could have kept driving, she said. A lot of people did, he answered. The honesty of that hung there for a second. She took it in her jaw, working. And now you are here, she said. doing this. It is a job, he said. I needed one. This one was hiring. One of the suited men cleared his throat gently. Ms. Grant, we are on a schedule, he said. She held up one finger without taking her eyes off Ethan. In a minute, she said. The man subsided. She turned slightly, angling them, so that the others had an excuse to look away and pretend they were not listening. Do you have family? She asked. A daughter, he said. He hesitated, then added Mia. She is 7. She nodded like that meant something specific to her. I have been thinking about that morning since it happened, she said. I kept replaying it in my head. My car dies. I am standing there useless, and some stranger in a suit stops, crawls under the hood, and ends up missing an interview that might have changed his life. He could feel heat rise under the collar of his shirt. Life has lots of mites, he said. That is an impressive way to dodge admitting you got hurt, she said. He met her eyes. There was no pity there, just clarity. He did not respond. She let the silence sit for a moment, then reached into the inside pocket of her blazer and pulled out a card. The cardstock was thicker than normal, with a matte finish. She held it between 2 fingers so he could see the logo, Grant Development Group, in clean, dark letters. Underneath her name, Olivia Grant, CEO. Ethan had known she was important the moment the site manager called her Ms. Grant, but seeing the 3 letters spelled out there still made something shift in his chest. She extended the card toward him. I cannot change what happened that morning, she said. You made a choice you should not have had to pay for like that. But I can do something about right now. He looked at the card, then at her. What is this, he asked. An invitation, she said. Come to my office tomorrow at 9. I want to hear your story properly. Not on the side of a road, not in the middle of a job site. He did not reach for the card right away. I already told you the short version, he said. I want the long one, she said, and I want to see if there is any way I can help fix what my dead car helped break. There is nothing to fix, he said. I am working. I will be fine. Are you always this stubborn, or is it just today, she asked. Louise snorted quietly behind him and pretended to cough as he turned away. Ethan exhaled through his nose. I do not want charity, he said. It is not charity, she replied. I cannot help a bad engineer. I cannot help someone who does not show up. But I can pick up a phone. I can call people who hung up on you once and ask them to listen again. The rest is on you. He thought of his mother's voice. You keep choosing to lose. He thought of Mia asking if they would be okay. He thought of the receptionist's neutral smile as she told him the schedule had moved on. He finally reached out and took the card. The surface felt cool and smooth under the grime on his fingertips. Tomorrow at 9, she repeated. Where, he asked. She flipped the card over and tapped to the address on the back. Headquarters, she said. Top floor. There is a lobby, a receptionist, the whole thing. They are nicer than Kelso's. He raised an eyebrow. You know Kelso, he said. A corner of her mouth lifted. I know a lot of people who build things in this city, she said. It is my job. The suited man who had spoken before stepped forward half a step. Ms. Grant, he said, quieter this time. She glanced at him, then back at Ethan. I have to go, she said. Investors love to be walked around concrete that will eventually be marble. He gave a small huff at that. Thank you, he said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. Do not thank me yet, she said. Just show up. She turned and walked back to the group, her hard hat catching the light for a second as she passed through a shaft of sun. The men in suits shifted around her, the site manager slid back into position at her side, and the cluster moved off toward the stairwell. Ray appeared at Ethan's elbow, eyebrows raised. What was that about? Ray asked. Ethan looked down at the card in his hand. His thumb rubbed over the embossed letters. Not sure, he said, yet. Ray squinted at the retreating group. That is the top of the food chain right there, Ray said. If she is talking to you, I hope you said something smart. I tried not to say anything stupid, Ethan said. Ray clapped him lightly on the back. Good rule in general, Ray said. All right, celebrity, back to work. Those boards are not going to move themselves. Ethan slid the card carefully into the inner pocket of his vest, where it rested against the fabric of his shirt. He picked up the next sheet of drywall with Louise, the familiar weight grounding him, as the voices of the executives faded down the stairs and the sounds of the site rose again to fill the space. That night, the card felt heavier than it should have. Ethan kept taking it out of his pocket, turning it over, then putting it back again. The name on the front stayed the same every time he checked. Olivia Grant, CEO? He set it on the table while Mia did her homework, the simple white rectangle sitting between her spelling list and his half-eaten dinner. She glanced at it once. Who is that? She asked. Someone from work, he said. She owns the big building we are helping with. Mia's eyes grew round. She owns a whole building, she said. Something like that, he answered. He did not say anything about the meeting. He did not want to explain it until he understood it himself. After Mia went to bed, he washed the dishes slowly, hands moving on autopilot. The cheap sponge squeaked against the plates. The faucet dripped twice into the empty sink. The card sat on the counter beside his phone. 9 o'clock, her office, top floor. He imagined the inside of a developer's headquarters. Glass and chrome and art that looked expensive. People who could tell a whole crew to move from one site to another with a phone call. He dried his hands and picked up the card again. The address on the back was in a part of the city he knew only from maps and the occasional drive-by. His thumb traced the logo once more before he finally set it on the small pile of things he would need in the morning. Keys, wallet, bus schedule, hard hat just in case he went to the site afterward. Sleep did not come easily. He lay in the dark listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing on the street outside. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw some version of the day ahead. Olivia sitting behind a huge desk, telling him she had made a mistake. Olivia saying she was sorry that there was nothing anyone could do. Olivia offering something he was afraid to take. When his alarm finally went off, he felt like he had not slept at all. Mia was extra sleepy too. She burrowed deeper under her blanket when he tried to wake her. 5 more minutes, she mumbled. I would, but the bus will not wait, he said. He got her to school, hugged her a little longer than usual, then drove toward the city in his one decent button-down shirt and the same suit jacket he had worn to Kelso. The tie stayed folded in the glove compartment. He did not feel like wrapping it around his neck again. Grant Development Group's headquarters rose from a block lined with trees and clean sidewalks. The building was 15 stories of glass and light gray stone, its lobby visible from the street. People in sharp clothes swiped badges at turnstiles, while a barista behind a coffee counter pulled espresso shots. Ethan parked in a visitor garage around the corner and walked his footsteps sounding too loud on the polished floor when he entered the lobby. The air smelled like fresh coffee and some kind of subtle citrus cleaner. At the reception desk, a young man in a tailored shirt smiled at him. Good morning, the receptionist said. Welcome to Grant Development. Do you have an appointment? Yes, Ethan said. With Olivia Grant, 9 o'clock. Name is Ethan Cole. The receptionist checked a screen, then nodded. She is expecting you, he said. 15th floor. Take the elevators on the left. Ethan pressed the call button. When the doors opened, he stepped into a small metal room lined with mirrors and brushed steel. The elevator rose with a smooth, almost soundless motion. The numbers above the door climbed steadily. His ears popped slightly around floor 10. He flexed his fingers, then forced them to be still. The doors opened onto a hushed hallway. Light wood floors, white walls, large windows at the far end showing a slice of the skyline and the river. A woman in a neat dress and a badge around her neck approached. Mr. Crickle, she asked. Yes, he said. Right this way, she said. She led him down the hallway to a corner office. The door was open. Inside, Olivia stood near a floor-to-ceiling window, her back to the door looking out over the city. The view was startling. From this angle, he could see the river threading through the building's bridges spanning it in clean lines. The skeleton of the high-rise he was working on rose somewhere beyond cranes like thin arms against the sky. Olivia turned when they stepped in. Thank you, Claire, she said to the assistant. That will be all. Claire nodded and closed the door behind Ethan. Olivia had traded the blazer for a softer jacket, but she still looked like someone who made decisions for a living. There was a stack of folders on her desk, a laptop open, 2 empty coffee cups pushed to one side. Ethan, she said, I am glad you came. I figured if I ignored a CEO's invitation, someone would revoke my hard hat, he said. The corner of her mouth lifted. Sit, she said, gesturing to one of the chairs in front of her desk. He sat the chair firmer than it looked. She did not go behind her desk. Instead, she took the other chair so there was no barrier between them. For a moment, they sat in a quiet that was not awkward exactly, but full. I wanted to talk without concrete dust in the air, she said, and without 3 men in suits pretending not to eavesdrop. Fair, he said. She leaned forward slightly, forearms resting on her knees. Tell me about you, she said. All of it. Not just the part where my car broke down and ruined your morning. He hesitated. There was always a point where telling the truth started to feel like admitting weakness. He studied her face. There was no sign she was asking out of curiosity alone, or for sport. She looked like someone trying to assemble a puzzle. He took a breath. Graduated with a structural engineering degree 10 years ago, he said. Got a job with a mid-sized firm outside the city. Spent a few years doing the usual. Long hours, calculations, site visits, coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. Her mouth twitched. I got married, he said. We had Mia. Then when Mia was 3, my wife got sick. It went fast, too fast. He stared at a point on the carpet just past her chair for a moment. After she died, things got messy, he said. I took some time off that turned into more time off. Missed a couple deadlines when I went back. My head was not in it. They said they understood, but jobs like that do not really pause. They let you go, she said. Restructuring, he said. At least that was the word in the email. I started sending out resumes, took whatever small contract work I could find. Then the savings ran out. The contract work slowed. The rejections piled up. He rubbed his thumb along a callus on his palm. My mother thinks I wasted everything my father gave me, he said. He was an engineer too, the old kind. Slide rules and graph paper. He built bridges, real ones. He was good at it. He also died a few years ago, which makes him hard to argue with. Olivia watched him quietly. Outside the window, a barge moved slowly along the river, so small from this height it looked like a toy. And in the middle of all that, you ended up on my road, she said. In the middle of that, I ended up doing day labor and odd jobs, he said. Trying to keep rent paid and food in the kitchen while applying to places that did not call me back. He gave a small shrug. When I got the email from Kelso, it felt like a door cracking open, he said. A real position, salary, benefits, the kind of thing my mother stopped sending me articles about when I have it. You prepared, she said. I studied for weeks, he said. I mapped 3 routes into the city. I ironed a shirt I did not even know I could iron anymore. She nodded once. And then my car died, she said. And then your car died, he said, on the one road I took to avoid the traffic I was afraid of. He wiped his hands on his pants even though they were clean. You know the rest, he said. I stopped. I tightened a cable. I watched the minutes slide past. I got there 23 minutes late. They did not see me. Her jaw tightened again when he said it. She looked out the window for a second, then back at him. Do you regret stopping? She asked. He sat with the question. It was one he had asked himself more than once in the days after. Some days I regret the outcome, he said. I do not regret not leaving you there. I do not want to be the person who drives by someone clearly needing help and decides their own agenda is more important, even if that agenda is rent. A small silence followed. That is what I thought, she said softly. She stood, finally moving behind her desk. She opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, and placed it between them. I called Kelso after I saw you on site, she said. I know Robert Harrison. We have crossed paths at conferences. I have bought steel from people he plays golf with, the usual. She tapped the folder. I asked him about you, she said. He remembered your name, a little, mostly as the guy who missed his slot. Ethan felt his neck grow warm. I told him what happened, she went on, not to guilt him, just to give context. Then I asked if the position you applied for had been filled, and he asked before he could stop himself. It has not, she said. Apparently they are picky, which is ironic under the circumstances. She opened the folder. Inside he saw a printout of an email. She slid it toward him. I convinced him to offer you another interview, she said. Same position, same salary, no special treatment. He looked down at the page. His own name stared back at him in the subject line. Invitation to interview, senior structural engineer, date and time. His heart banged hard against his ribs. Why, he asked. Because you should not be punished forever for doing something decent, she said. Because this city needs engineers who stop when someone is in trouble instead of pretending not to see. Because I could. I do not want a job because you pulled strings, he said. You are not getting one because I did, she said. You are getting a chance to sit in a room and prove you deserve it. If you bomb the interview, that is between you and your preparation. All I did was reopen a door that slammed on you for complicated reasons. He stared at the email. When he asked, Friday, she said, 2 days from now, 10 in the morning. That was enough time to prepare and not enough time to hide. He swallowed. You really think they will look at me without deciding I am the guy who cannot manage a clock? He asked. I think Harrison respects people I vouch for, she said. He will not hire you as a favor to me. He will at least listen. He nodded once, still absorbing. There is one condition, she said. He tensed. Of course there is, he said. You show up on time, she said. Early even. And you walk in there like you deserve to be in that chair. No apologizing for things that are not your fault. No talking down your own experience before they have a chance to do it for you. He let out a breath he had been holding. I can try, he said. Do more than try, she said. You know this work. I saw the way you looked at that frame on site. You were checking the bracing. You were doing math in your head while you carried drywall. Own that. His hands were resting on his knees. He realized his fingers had curled into his jeans, bunching the fabric. He forced them to relax. "Thank you," he said. "Now you can thank me," she said. "Go home, study, sleep, or whatever it is you need to do to get your brain where it needs to be." He stood. "You do not want to hear more about my mother's opinions?" he asked with a thin attempt at humor. "I suspect they are loud," she said, "and complicated. Save that story for after you get the job." He tucked the printed email into his folder carefully. "If I get it," he said. When she replied automatically, then shook her head. "Sorry. Habit. I run a company. I am supposed to sound confident." He did not trust his voice enough to answer, so he just nodded. As he walked out, the assistant at the desk gave him a small, curious smile. In the elevator, his reflection looked slightly different. The same clothes, the same lines around his eyes, but something in the set of his shoulders had shifted. On the street outside, the city noise felt sharper. Car horns, footsteps, a bike bell, the smell of roasted coffee from a nearby cart. He made it back to Aurora just in time to pick Mia up from school. She came running out, paper in hand. "I got a sticker," she announced, waving a star-shaped sticker on a worksheet. "For neat writing." "That is more than I got today," he said. "Did you build more of the big building?" she asked. "Kind of," he said. At home after dinner and dishes when she had gone to bed, and the apartment was quiet, he sat at the table with his laptop open. The light from the screen washed his face in a pale glow. He pulled up old files, notes from exams, project reports, diagrams of load paths and stress curves. Terms he had not said out loud in months swam back into focus. His phone buzzed on the table. His mother's name lit up the screen. He stared at it for a moment, then answered. "How was work?" Carol asked. "Busy," he said. "Still carrying wood?" she asked. "For now," he said. "I have another interview on Friday, at Kelso again." Silence, then a small, disbelieving sound. "They are giving you another chance," she said. "Someone put in a word," he said. "I am going. I do not want you to get your hopes up," she said. "You know how these things can go. I cannot watch you crash again." He closed his eyes. "I need to try," he said. "I am just trying to protect you," she said. "You cannot afford another failure. Mia cannot either." He opened his eyes and looked at the bridge, drawing on the fridge at the stacked lines of color. "I know," he said. "I will call you after it is done." He ended the call before she could answer. The apartment felt suddenly very quiet. The only sound was the ticking of the clock and the soft whir of the refrigerator. He turned back to the laptop. His hand settled on the mouse, the skin on his palm rough against the plastic. One problem at a time, he told himself. One span at a time. He clicked open another set of notes and began to read the words and numbers slowly snapping back into place in his mind as the night stretched around him. Friday morning felt too bright. The sky over Aurora was a clean blue, as if the weather had decided to cooperate just to remove one excuse. Ethan stood in front of the mirror with his suit jacket on and his father's tie draped over his shoulders, ends hanging loose. He picked up the tie, pizzed, then set it back down on the counter. The memory of Kelso's lobby and the way the fabric had felt tight against his throat flickered in his mind. He took a breath and folded the tie, carefully sliding it into the drawer. The collar of his shirt lay open at his neck. He buttoned it to the top and looked at himself. It was not perfect, but he looked like someone who knew where he needed to be. In the kitchen, Mia chewed on a piece of toast, feet kicking under the chair. "You look like your interview again," she said. "Round 2, he said. "Is it the same place?" she asked. "Same building," he said. "Different day." "Are they nicer on second chances?" she asked. "We are going to find out," he said. He packed her lunch double, checking the zipper on her backpack. It snagged halfway as it always did, but he worked it back and forth until it closed. When they reached the school, she lingered by the entrance instead of running straight in. Kids streamed around them, chatter and backpack straps and shoelaces. "Can you come pick me up yourself today?" she asked. "I will try," he said. "If the interview goes long, Mrs. Harris might grab you." "That is okay," she said. She studied his face for a second. "You will call me if it is good news." "I will come to tell you," he said. She nodded, satisfied. Then she stood on tiptoe and pressed her hand against his chest, right where his heart was. "Do not be scared," she said. He put his hand over hers. "I am working on it," he said. She pulled away and ran through the doors, turning once to wave, before she disappeared into the bright hallway. On the drive into the city, the highway felt like a different road. Traffic moved steady and normal. No jams, no flashing lights, no surprise detours. Ethan checked the clock every 10 minutes anyway, waiting for some twist. Nothing came. He parked in the same garage near Kelso Dynamics. The concrete ramp echoed under his tires. When he stepped out of the car, the air felt cooler than it had that first day, though. The building was the same chunk of glass and stone. This time he was 15 minutes early. The receptionist looked up as he entered the lobby. Her expression flickered with recognition. "Good morning," she said. "Can I help you?" "Ethan Cole," he said. "Interview for the senior structural engineer position, 10 o'clock." She typed his name, then glanced at the clock. "You are early," she said. "I learned my lesson," he replied. Something like a smile touched the corner of her mouth. "Please have a seat, Mr. Cole," she said. "Mr. Harrison will be with you shortly." He chose a chair along the wall. A flat screen above the reception desk cycled through images of Bridges buildings and interior spaces with captions about innovation and sustainability. His folder rested in his lap, but he did not open it. He had spent most of the night with those pages. There was nothing new to find there now. He focused on his breathing, counting each inhale and exhale. In, out, in, out. The buzz of quiet conversation from another cluster of chairs washed through the room. The smell of coffee drifted from somewhere deeper in the building. At 10:15, a man in a dark suit stepped into the lobby from a set of glass doors. He was in his 50s, hair graying at the temples, posture straight. His tie was perfectly knotted. "Mr. Cole," he called. Ethan stood. "Yes, sir," he said. "Robert Harrison," the man said, offering his hand. "Come on back." Ethan shook his hand. The grip was firm, dry, practiced. He followed Harrison down a hallway lined with framed photographs of completed projects, bridges over wide rivers, skyscrapers with mirrored windows, parking structures that somehow looked elegant. They entered a conference room with a long table and a wall of glass that looked out over the city. A stack of papers lay at one end. A whiteboard stood ready with markers. Harrison gestured to a chair. "Have a seat," he said. Ethan sat. Harrison took the chair across from him, opened a folder, and scanned the first page. "Ms. Grant speaks very highly of you," Harrison said without looking up. Ethan kept his hands folded on the table. "I am grateful she thought of me," he said. "She can be persuasive," Harrison said, "but she also knows I do not hire people just because someone asks. So, let us see if you deserve the trouble she went through." There was no malice in the tone, just bluntness. "Tell me about your last role as an engineer," Harrison said. Ethan talked. He talked about design work at his old firm, about reinforcement detailing, about revising plans when soil reports came back different than expected. He described site visits in winter, checking concrete pours under tarps, making sure rebar placements matched the drawings. Harrison listened occasionally, jotting a note. His questions came precise and layered. "What is your approach to designing a long-span beam in a mixed-use building with variable live loads?" he asked. Ethan answered, thinking through load combinations, deflection limits, serviceability. He found that once he started, the language came back. Terms that had sat dormant slid into place again. Harrison shifted to practical scenarios. "You are on site," he said. "A subcontractor wants to cut a larger opening in a shear wall to run mechanical ducts. They tell you it will be fine because it is only a few inches. What do you do?" Ethan almost smiled. He had lived versions of that question. "Ask for the dimensions and exact location," he said. "Check the original design, see what that wall is carrying. If I cannot verify in the field that the change is safe, I tell them to wait. No cutting until the modification is confirmed on paper. People get uncomfortable, but holes are hard to uncut." Harrison's mouth twitched. They moved through more questions. One about seismic detailing, even though the region was low risk. One about coordinating with architects who did not like thick columns. One about managing time when 3 projects all wanted attention. At one point, Harrison slid a set of drawings across the table. "Find the problem," he said. Ethan bent over the plans. There was a connection detail that seemed straightforward at first glance, but the more he traced the lines, the more something bothered him. The load path from a cantilevered balcony did not look right. He picked up a pen and marked the joint. "If the balcony load goes here," he said, sketching a simple force diagram, "you are asking this connection to do more than it can. It needs either a heavier member or a different support. Otherwise, you will get rotation you do not want." Harrison watched his hand move. When they finished, the clock on the wall read a little after 11. Ethan felt wrung out in a different way than after a day on site. His brain hummed. Harrison closed the folder. "All right," he said. "I appreciate your honesty about your gap in employment. Ms. Grant filled in some of the context there, but I wanted to hear it from you." Ethan inclined his head. "I did not handle that period well," he said. "But I have learned how to work again, on a different kind of site. Your experience as labor on the Grant project is not a negative in my book," Harrison said. "If anything, engineers who have carried drywall tend to draw better details." Ethan let out a small breath he had been holding. Harrison stood and extended his hand again. "We will be in touch," he said. "Thank you for the opportunity," Ethan said. As he left the room, the hallway seemed brighter than when he had walked in. He did not know if he had passed some invisible threshold, but he knew he had said everything he could say. Outside, the air had warmed. He sat in his car in the garage for a few minutes before starting it, hands resting lightly on the wheel, eyes closed. He drove back to Aurora, the route familiar now. The noise of the highway wrapped around the car. His phone stayed silent on the passenger seat. At the school, Mia spotted him from the front doors and ran out braid swinging. "You came yourself," she said, sounding pleased. "I did," he said. "How was it?" she asked, walking beside him, with exaggeratedly long steps to match his. "I answered their questions," he said. "All of them this time." "Did they like you?" she asked. "I think they liked that I knew which walls not to cut," he said. She seemed to accept that as success. Days passed. He went back to the high-rise site, back to hauling materials and setting up bracing, back to Ray's dry jokes and Luis's loud laughter. No one asked about the interview, but Ray gave him a single nod one morning that felt like a question. Ethan nodded back, which felt like an answer. On Wednesday afternoon, just before lunch, his phone vibrated in his pocket while he was on the third floor stacking lengths of metal track. He almost ignored it, expecting another spam call, but something about the insistent buzz made him pull it out. The number was unfamiliar, but the area code matched the city. He stepped away from the clatter and pressed the phone to his ear. "This is Ethan," he said. "Mr. Cole," a woman's voice said. "This is Amanda Richards from Kelso Dynamics. Do you have a moment to speak with Mr. Harrison?" His heart kicked. "Yes," he said, "I do." "Please hold," she said. The line went quiet except for a faint hum. Ethan turned his back to the open floor, facing a concrete column. He could feel the grit under his boots, the faint vibration of a crane somewhere above. After a few seconds, another voice came on. "Mr. Cole," Harrison said. "Thank you for taking the call." "Of course," Ethan said. He tried to keep his voice steady. "We have had a chance to review your interview and your references," Harrison said. "I will be frank. We do not usually extend second interviews to candidates who miss their first even under unusual circumstances." "I understand," Ethan said. "However," Harrison continued, "Ms. Grant made a strong case that you were worth that exception, and your performance in the interview supported her argument." Ethan pressed his free hand against the cool concrete of the column. "We would like to offer you the position of senior structural engineer," Harrison said. "Starting salary will be $85,000 per year with standard benefits and a sign-on bonus. Are you interested in accepting that offer?" For a moment, Ethan could not find his voice. The words existed in his ear, but they refused to connect to anything. Then his mouth caught up. "Yes," he said. "Yes, I am." "Good," Harrison said. "We will send you the formal offer and paperwork this afternoon. Our HR department will walk you through the details. Tentative start date in 2 weeks, if that works for you." "That works," Ethan said. "In my mind, welcome to Kelso Dynamics, Mr. Cole." "De Cole," Harrison said. "We bandidurm." "Thank you," Ethan said. The line clicked as the call ended. He lowered the phone slowly. The sight sounds crept back in. A hammer striking metal. A worker calling for someone to watch a load. The beep of a reversing truck. Luis walked over, squinting. "You look like you saw a ghost," Luis said. Ethan turned to him. He felt something unfamiliar lift in his chest, light and startling. "I got the job," he said. Luis blinked, then grinned wide. "No way," he said. "Way," Ethan said. Ray, hearing the commotion, wandered closer. "What is all the noise?" Ray asked. "Engineer man is going back to the office," Luis said. "Kelso hired him." Ray's eyes settled on Ethan. For a second, something like pride flashed there. "About time someone noticed you know what you are talking about," Ray said. "When do you start?" 2 weeks, Ethan said. "Then we will work you twice as hard until then," Ray said. "Cannot have you slacking just because you are joining the suits." Ethan laughed, the sound feeling strange and good in his own ears. That evening, he picked Mia up from school and took a different turn on the way home. "Where are we going?" she asked, peering out the window. "You will see," he said. They stopped at a small ice cream shop with a faded awning and a neon sign that flickered. Inside, the air smelled of sugar and cold. He let her pick 2 scoops instead of 1. She stood on tiptoe to see over the counter. "Is it somebody's birthday?" she asked as she licked melting chocolate off the side of her cone. "Sort of," he said. They sat at a small metal table, outside the late sun, warm on their faces. "I got the job," he said. She stopped mid-lick. "The big one?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "The big one, at Kelso." Her grin spread slow and bright. "Does that mean you build real bridges again?" she asked. "It means I get to help," he said. "From a different angle. We will still get dirt on our shoes sometimes." She swung her legs under the chair and leaned over to press her shoulder against his. "Grandma is going to be so happy," she said. He thought of the call he would make later, of the shift in his mother's voice when he told her. Yeah, he said. I think she will. They sat there, cones in hand, watching cars move along the street, the day sliding into evening one small, ordinary moment at a time. 2 weeks went by faster than Ethan expected. On his last day at the high-rise site, the morning air was crisp and bright. The building had grown since his first shift there. More floors framed out, more beams locked in place, more of the shape that only he seemed to see fully when he looked up. Ray called everyone over at lunch break. The crew gathered near the trailer, hard hats, tilted back gloves tucked into belts. Ray held a plain white envelope in one hand. Before our resident almost former engineer runs off to the land of climate control and swivel chairs, Ray said the guys wanted to say something. He handed Ethan the envelope. Inside was a folded card with a cartoon of a construction worker on the front and signatures crammed into every available space inside. Tucked behind the card was a small stack of bills, 20s, 10s, a couple of 5s. You did not have to do this, Ethan said, the words coming out rougher than he intended. Louise shrugged. You carried the heavy stuff without whining, Louise said. That is worth at least $20. A ripple of laughter went through the group. Ray scratched his jaw. You showed up, Ray said. You did not act like you were too good for any of it, even when it was obvious you knew more than half the people giving orders. That matters. Ethan swallowed. Thank you, he said. All of you. Just remember us when you are designing things that fall on people's heads, Mark said. I will try very hard to avoid that, Ethan replied. They went back to work, but something in the way they moved around him had shifted. There was a little extra space made for him at the end of the day when he put his vest and hard hat into his bag for the last time. The following Monday, he walked into Kelso Dynamics as an employee, not a visitor. HR handed him a badge with his name printed under the company logo. Ethan clipped it to his belt and followed a coordinator to a cubicle on the 4th floor. This will be you for now, she said. Computer is set up. Email login is on that sticky note. He sat down. The chair spun a little under him, the fabric new and scratch-free. A widescreen monitor stared back from a clean desk. The view was not dramatic, just a slice of another building and a bit of sky. But the steady hum of air vents and the faint tapping of keyboards nearby wrapped around him in a way that felt strangely comforting. The first days were full of logins, introductions, and tours. He met other engineers, a mix of older veterans and younger staff fresh from school. They shook his hand, looked at his resume, and asked neutral questions about his experience. None of them asked why his hands looked the way they did. He dove into his first assignment, a mid-rise office building, in a suburb not far from where he lived. The calculations felt rusty at first, but then the patterns came back. Load paths, moment frames, deflection limits. The lines on the drawings started to carry weight again. Every afternoon he watched the clock with a different kind of attention. At 3, if things allowed, he closed his laptop and headed for his car. The drive to Mia's school was short. The first few times he walked up to the door, she looked genuinely surprised to see him instead of Mrs. Harris. You are early, she said one day, like it was a strange new species of event. Get used to it, he said. Friday became ice cream day. The shop owner started greeting them by name. A month later, he signed a lease for a different apartment. It was not fancy, but it was in a quieter neighborhood, closer to the school with cleaner hallways and a small balcony off the living room. The building stood across from a park with a little pond and a footbridge. On moving day, they carried boxes up 2 flights of stairs. Mia insisted on taking the lamp shaped like a rocket herself. Her new room had a window that looked out over the park. She stood with her hands on the sill, watching kids chase each other near the swings, the footbridge arching gently over the water. This is the best room, she said. You have not even unpacked yet, Ethan said. I do not have to, she replied. I know. That evening, after they had eaten pizza on the floor, surrounded by half-open boxes, Ethan stepped out onto the balcony. The air carried the smell of cut grass and distant traffic. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to his mother's number. She answered on the second ring. Hi, she said. How did the move go? Boxes everywhere, he said. But we are in. It is nice, Mom. Mia loves it. I wish I could have helped, she said. You can come see it, he said. Once we figure out where we put everything. There was a pause. I would like that, she said. He hesitated, then added, I started at Kelso 3 weeks ago. I know, she said. Olivia Grant sent me an email. He blinked. She did what he asked. She reached out, Carol said. Somehow she found my address. She wanted to tell me she had met the man you are at work. Ethan let out a short breath. That sounds like her, he said. She said you were good, Carol said. Not nice, not kind, good, at what you do. Her voice wobbled slightly. I am proud of you, Ethan, she said. I should have said that before someone else had to say it first. He stared out at the park, at the bridge lit by the last light of the day. It helps hearing it now, he said. A few weeks later, Carol came to visit. She arrived on a Saturday morning, carrying a pie in one hand and a tote bag in the other. She stepped into the apartment and took in the small living room, the second-hand couch, the view of the park. It feels airy, she said. You have light. Mia's requirement, Ethan said. She said we needed a view. Mia burst out of her room and flung herself at her grandmother, who laughed and nearly dropped the pie. Carol walked slowly through the apartment, touching the back of a chair, the edge of the counter. When she reached the fridge, she stopped. The drawing of the bridge was there, held up by the same magnet as before. The lines were as wobbly as ever. Underneath, in Mia's handwriting, new letters had been added, and houses. Carol rested her fingers on the paper. This is good, she said. She turned to Ethan, eyes shining more than usual. I am sorry, she said quietly, for all the times I made it harder when you were already carrying too much. I thought if I pushed you, you would not break. I did not realize you were already bent over as far as you could go. He shifted his weight hands, sliding into his pockets. I know why you did it, he said. Dad left a big shadow. He did, she said. But you are not supposed to live entirely inside it. You are allowed to be your own person, your own father. Mia came back in then, tugging on Carol's sleeve, demanding to show her the park. The heaviness in the room eased. They walked over together. Ethan watched from the bridge as Mia pointed out every swing, every tree that she had decided had a name. That evening, after Carol had gone back to her hotel and Mia had fallen asleep clutching a new stuffed animal Grandma had insisted on buying, Ethan's phone buzzed. It was a text from a number he now recognized instantly. How is the new place? He smiled and typed back, Good. Park outside. Mia approves. A few seconds passed. Glad to hear it, Olivia wrote. You settling in at Kelso? Getting there, he replied. Still learning where the coffee is not terrible. She responded with a single line. You did the work. He looked at the words for a long moment, then typed before he could second-guess himself. Want to get coffee sometime? I owe you at least that much. He put the phone down, expecting a delay. The reply came faster than he thought it would. I would like that. Saturday. They met at a small cafe downtown with big windows and mismatched chairs. Olivia was already there when he arrived, in jeans and a sweater instead of a blazer. Her hair was down softer around her face. She stood when he walked in, and for a moment they both looked amused by the awkwardness of deciding whether to shake hands or hug. Hi, she said. Hi, he said. They ended up with coffee and a table by the window. Outside, people walked dogs and carried shopping bags. A bus hissed at the curb. You look less tired, she said, eyeing him over the rim of her mug. Less construction dust in my lungs these days, he said. You look exactly as busy. She laughed. It does not really slow down, she said. Investors do not care if you were up at 3 in the morning thinking about rebar schedules. They talked about work, about crazy change orders, about architects who drew impossible curves, about the satisfaction of seeing a project go from lines on paper to something you could walk through. At one point, her expression shifted. I keep thinking about that road, she said. If your car had not taken that detour, if mine had died 30 minutes later, if a dozen small things had gone differently. Life is a lot of ifs, he said. She nodded. I am working on something, she said. A fund, maybe a foundation for people like you. People with skills who fall through the net once and have a hard time climbing back. Second chances, he said. More like second spans, she said. First one cracks, you do not tear the whole bridge down. You reinforce. You build another beside it. He smiled at the term. Let me know when you need someone to carry paperwork, he said. I am good at carrying things. I might ask for more than that, she said. They left the cafe and walked a few blocks together. At a corner, she stopped. Thank you again, she said. For what, he asked. For stopping, she said. For not pretending you did not see me. I probably would have made the meeting anyway, but it would have been a worse day. A worse version of me. He thought of that morning. The empty road. The blinking hazards. His foot moving to the brake almost on its own. I am glad I did, he said. She squeezed his hand once, quick and warm, then stepped back. Go home to your kid, she said. I have to go yell at a spreadsheet. Weeks turned into months. Ethan's days fell into a new pattern. Calculations, team meetings, site visits in a hard hat that now carried the Kelso logo. Evenings in the park with Mia. Occasional emails from Olivia about projects always signed with her full name, even though their conversations had shifted into something more familiar. One Saturday afternoon, the park below their balcony was full of sunlight. Kids ran along the path. Dogs barked near the trees. The footbridge over the pond reflected on the still surface of the water. Ethan sat on a swing while Mia pumped her legs on the one next to him. Higher, she said. You are going to kick that cloud, he said. She laughed and leaned back, hair streaming behind her. After a while, she let the swing slow, dragging her feet in the bark dust. She sat quiet for a moment, watching a duck glide across the pond. "Dad," she said. "Yeah, in incendi." He answered, "If bicket word, bestozile, bailey bistirupsi." "Why did you stop for that lady's car?" she asked. He looked at her. "What made you think of that?" he asked. She shrugged. "You told me once," she said. "And then you were sad about the job. I was just thinking, if you did not stop, would we still live here?" The question hung in the air between them. He nudged his swing gently with the front of his shoe, making it creak. "I stopped because she needed help," he said, "and because I do not like the idea of driving by someone who is stuck and pretending I do not see it." "Even if it made you late?" she asked. "Even if it made me late," he said. She thought about that brow furrowing in concentration. "I am glad you stopped," she said finally. "Me too," he said. "Because now you have your job," she said, "and I have my room, and Grandma does not sound mad anymore." "That is a nice side effect," he said. She hopped off the swing and ran toward the bridge, arms out like an airplane. He watched her cross it, her small figure moving against the simple arc. From where he sat, the bridge was just a bit of painted metal over a shallow pond. Nothing complex, nothing anyone would write an article about. But it connected two pieces of ground that had been separate before. It let kids run from one side of the park to the other without thinking about mud or distance. It made their Saturdays feel larger. He stood and walked over, resting his hand on the cool railing, as Mia leaned over to look at her reflection in the water. His palm rough from work, old and new, fit easily around the metal. Mia straightened and slipped her hand into his. They walked back across together, the boards of the bridge knocking softly under their steps, the late afternoon light stretching their shadows out in front of them as they made their way home. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.